Scrollable timeline gives us an ability to define an animation effect whose start and end can be controlled by scrolling buttons. In this tutorial, we are going to learn how to create this scrollable timeline in Tableau. So without any further delays, let's jump straight into it and see how we can create this in Tableau. Welcome back, this is Gurpreet from DataViz Canvas, and in today's tutorial, we are going to learn about how to create a scrollable timeline in Tableau. For this, I'm showing the US president's timeline. So from the beginning, when the first US president was elected and he started his term, to the latest one. So as you can see here, this is the timeline where we are showing all the years when that event took place. So for example, it started from 1779 and onwards. So you can see here all these different years where you see these cube is the year when a particular president was selected. And we can use these buttons, right button and left button, to move on the right hand side of the timeline, or we can use this left arrow button to move on the left hand side of the timeline. And when we click on any of these events, it will update the text, which will show us the detail about that president, in which year that president was elected, and the description of that president. So you can select on all these events and see the description of that particular event. So in this tutorial, we are going to see how easy it is to create this scrollable timeline in Tableau and how impactful it is. So for this, let me show you the dataset which I have used for this one. So in this, I'm using just these four fields, starting from the year field. So this is the year when that US president was elected. So for example, in 1789, the first US president was elected, which was George Washington. And then we are showing the description field, which talks about that president, so giving us details and description about that president. And you will see all different years which was the term of this president. So we are showing this as blank. So basically from 1989 to 1796, we had George Washington as the president. So his term was started on in 1789. So similarly, we have the second president, which was John Adams, whose term started in 1797, and so on. So this is our data set, and let's see how we can use this data set to create a scrollable timeline in Tableau. So let's open a blank workbook, and in this I have already connected to the dataset like this. So for this, first of all, we need to bring the year field into our column shelf. And then we will see here all these years are selected from left to right, starting from the first year 1789 to the latest one, 2021, when the latest president was selected in 2021. Then we will simply create a placeholder field by typing in 0 in the row shelf. And once we do that, we will see a straight line appeared here. And we will right click, or we will click on this drop down of this green pill and change this to dimension. And you will see multiple circles appeared here. And we will change it to the shape of circle. And along with that, we will press Command in the Mac or Control in the Windows, and we will just simply drag the 0 and create a second pearl for a placeholder. And in this case, we will change the first one to line, and we'll keep the second one as the circle. And then we will simply click on this drop-down menu and create a dual axis chart. And also we will synchronize the axes, so we make sure both these axes are synchronized, and we will hide the headers. So we don't want to show the headers. So now we have all the years starting from 1789 till 2021. So what is happening here? Like with that many years in this timeline, it's hard to show what event occurred in which particular year. So for this, we need a scrollable timeline. So in order to do that, we need to start by creating some calculations. But before that, we need to create few parameters. So let's first create few parameters. The first one is timeline start. So we will use an integer, and this timeline start, it shows us the year on the visible timeline when that timeline starts from which particular year. So in this case, I will default it to 1789, and that is a current value. And now we will do the timeline end. So we need a parameter, right? So we will create a parameter as timeline end. Again, we will use integer, and timeline end tells us the year on which the visible timeline ends. So in this case, I will default it to, let's say, 1828. So we have created these two parameters. Now we need to create two more parameters. The next one is timeline years. So timeline years tells us the number of years we will show at one time in the timeline. So in this case, we will try to show, let's say, 30, 40. Let's keep it 40 in this case. So now let's create the step size by creating a parameter, and we will just give the name timeline step. And again, it will be an integer field, and we will give the step size as 5. So basically, number of years we will jump to the right or left when we scroll. So that's the main purpose of step size. So once we have created all this, we will create a first calculated field, and we will give the name year filter. So what we are trying to show here is we will only keep the years within that timeline dates by using this calculated field. So what it does is we are saying if the year field, whatever year we have selected, is greater than or equal to the timeline start, which is our parameter which we created, the start parameter, and if the year is less than or equal to the timeline end, then keep, otherwise exclude those values. So what it will do is when we bring it here, you will see we have the years from 1789 to 2021, but we don't want to show all of them at the same time. So for that, we need a scrollable timeline. So to start with, we will bring this year filter in this filter shelf, and we will just keep the values which we need to show. So once we do that, you will see from 1789 to 1828, we got all these years in that. But if you notice, the presidents were not elected on each of these years. So the event took place in different years. So these are basically 40 years in here, which we have shown using the parameter. So if I bring all the parameters on the right hand side, it will show you what I meant. So our timeline start is 1789. When you hover over to this year or to this circle, it will show you when it started and when it ended, 1828. So that's based on the parameter selection. And total number of years are 40 in this case, right? So now what we need to do, we want to create other field which we should call is event. So that's the field where the president was selected. So that's the real event, right? The term when the president was selected. So we will say if is null term event, then false, else equal to true. So we had few fields where these are null. So we are saying if it is null, then keep it false. If this term event is true, then keep it true. So let's see what it happens here. So we will just bring it here. And into that second placeholder which we selected, we will change it to shapes, and we will bring this is event to the shape. And when we double select that, for false value, we need to show nothing. So for in this case, I have created a transparent shape, which I have saved it here, and I will just select that one. So what it will does is it will show nothing when it is false. See, it removes all the circles in between. And for the true values, you can use any fields. So in this case, I can use any, but I have decided to use the green cube. You can use circle or whichever field you like. I can increase the size here. That looks better. And then I would like to create another calculated field, which is for the year label. So I will give the name year label, and I will say the same thing. If it is null, if the term event is null, then show me nothing, otherwise show me year. And I will press OK and bring the year label to the label shelf. And you will see here, we will see that value here. And I will keep it as entire view. And you can change the colors if you like, or you can do whatever you want to do with this particular label. You can increase the size if you like, and you can do it that way. So I have the year field here. I don't want to show the tooltips, so I will simply go into all and remove all the tooltips from here. So once we have that done, we will move on to the next step. So we have created a timeline, but it's only showing 5 or 6 years in that particular timeline. So now we need to make it scrollable. So for that, we need to work on the interface, which is needed to scroll the timeline. So in this case, we'll be using left and right buttons to scroll left and right. And also we'll be using parameter actions, which will help to make changes to the timeline start and timeline end parameters to increase or decrease the value of these parameters by clicking on the button. So for that, what we need to do, first of all, we will create few calculated fields, and then we'll work on the sheets. So let's create few calculated fields first. So first calculated field will be year last. So what it does is it will give us the maximum value of the year. It will give maximum value of the year within the timeline. So in this case, we have 2021, so it will give us that one. And then we will create another calculated field as the first or the start of the year or the minimum year. So we can say start of the year. And we will use the same, but instead of this, we will change it to minimum, and we will just make sure it will give the first year of the data set, and we click OK. Then we need to create 4 more calculated fields. So these calculated fields will be used to push the values to the timeline start and timeline end parameter. And these calculated fields will also need to account for the possibilities that we might be reaching at the end of the timeline or the start of the timeline, and to make sure we don't scroll past the last state. So let's start with our first calculated field, which is increase year start. So what this calculated field will do is it will adjust the start year when we move towards the right hand side. So it is saying, if you look at this one, if the timeline end plus timeline step is greater than last. So what does that mean is the timeline end is 1828 plus the timeline step in this case is 5. If this plus this is greater than the year last, which in this case is 2021, then give me the value of year last minus timeline years, which is 40. So in this case, 2021 minus 40 minus 1. So that will be our starting point of this timeline. So that value we will be adding or pushing it to this parameter, timeline start. Same way, we will create another calculated field, which will be increase year end. Increase year end. So it will do the same thing, but in this case, it will adjust the year end when we move towards the right. So in the previous one, we adjusted the year start. Now we will be doing the year end. And in this case, so we are saying if the timeline end plus timeline start is greater than last year. So in this case, we have to use the actual value, which is year last, and we are putting the same value here. We are saying if this is equal to, if this is greater than year last, then give me year last, else give me timeline end plus timeline step. So when we are going to the right hand side using the right button, these two fields will be used to adjust the start and end time of these parameters. So now we need to consider when we are clicking the left arrow key, we need to decrease the start and end of these parameters. So we will create two additional fields here, and we will give the name decrease year start. And it's the same concept what we just did for increase values for the year start and year end. So here we will put the calculation which will adjust the start year as we move towards the left, which is timeline start. Same concept where we are saying it's less than equal to the start year, which is the minimum year we have mentioned, which in this case is 1789. And we will similarly create another calculated field for decrease year end. And that will be the similar calculation. And we are saying we are adjusting the end year if we move towards the left. So once we have created all these fields, we will create the buttons now. So I will change the name of this worksheet and I will create first button, which is right arrow. And I will create a placeholder by putting 0 in the row shelf, and I will change it to dimension. And I will change the marks to shape. And you can use any shape you like. You can create your own custom shapes. But in this case, I will be using the existing arrows, and I will use the right arrow button for this one. And we will then just format the lines. Grid lines I don't want, zero lines I don't want, and same with the axis ruler I don't want. I just want to show the button, so I will hide the axis as well. And I will make sure the sheet is entire view, and I will increase the size to make it a little bit bigger. And because we are going to use the created fields, the increase year end and increase year start, to update the parameter actions when we click on the right arrow. So we will just drag these two in here. And I don't want it as a measure value, so I will change both of them to dimension, right? And now we will create the left arrow by doing the same thing. We will create a placeholder by putting 0, and we will change it to dimension. We will change the mark to shapes, and in this we will select left arrow shape and click OK. We will do a bit of formatting so that we don't show the 0 lines and the axis ruler, and we will hide the header as well, and we will make sure we are showing the entire view and increase the size a little bit. So now we have created left and right arrow, and I don't want to show any tooltips, so I will remove that from right and left arrow. We don't want to show any tooltips here. So now that we have created right and left arrow, and we have also created the timeline, and we will make sure all the years are appearing on the timeline label. So I will go to labels and make sure we overlap the labels. So you will see all the labels are already there. So now it's the time to create the dashboard. So let's create the dashboard, and you can adjust the width according to your requirements. So I will keep it 1600 in this case. And I would like to change the layout to floating containers. You can use the tiled one as well, but normally I prefer to use the floating containers. So now I don't want to show the events, but I will keep these years start and parameters just to show you how this thing will work. So I will hide the title, expand this one, and I will format this worksheet, and I don't want to show the dividers. So row divider and column dividers I will remove, and in the axis I don't want to show any grids and axes. So it is nice and clear. I will leave the header as of now, so I just wanted to show how this thing works. So let's bring the right arrow as well by just dragging and dropping, and just reduce the size and keep it on the right hand side. And same way I will do the left arrow, hide the title, and move it to the left hand side. Because we are using the floating worksheets, so that way you can put it wherever you find it aligned with the existing worksheet. But now when we click on these one, nothing is happening. So we need to set the parameter actions. So we go to the dashboard menu item and go to actions. And here, first of all, we have to create 4 parameter actions to change the values of start and end parameter when we select each one of this. So when we select the right arrow, we need to change 2 values. One is for the starting point and the ending point of the time series. So we will simply give the name. So move and right arrow, and we will select timeline end, and we will say increase year end, and aggregation we change it to none. Okay, now the second one we will create move start right arrow, and we will select the right arrow sheet, and we will say timeline start. That's the parameter, which is the start parameter of the timeline, and we will say increase year start. So we have to increase the year start when we select the right arrow. So click OK. Same way we will create 2 more for the left arrow. So move and left arrow, and we will select the left arrow sheet, and we will select timeline end. So when we select the left arrow, so the timeline end we need to update. So that we will update by the value in there. In this case, we don't have that value, so we need to bring that. So first of all, I click OK, and we go to the left arrow, and we see here we don't have any field in the detail shelf. If you see the right arrow, we put those 2 values, increase year end and start, right? We need to do the same thing for left arrow, and we will bring decrease years end and decrease year start in the detail mark, and then we will change it to dimension. Now let's go back again to the dashboard, and let's go back to the actions, and we need to fix the left arrow. So when we select the left arrow, timeline end, we need to select decrease year end and change the aggregation to none. So this will change the value of the timeline end when we select the left arrow. Now we need to add another parameter action to move start value of left arrow. And again, we will select the left arrow. So when we select the left arrow, now we will change the value of the timeline start, which is this one. So we will be selecting decrease year start, and we will change the aggregation to none. So now let's notice. So our first starting year is 1789, and the ending is 1828, which you can see it here in the timeline start. And our step size is 5. So when I click the right arrow or left arrow, so our timeline will shift by 5 years. So let's see now. So our 1789 is the start year. Now if we add 5 to that, it will be 1794. And the same way our end is 1828. If we add 5 years to that, it will be 1833. So when we select the right arrow, you focus on these 2 parameters, the values will change and the timeline will move towards the right by 5 years. See, you can see it here now. It's 1794 is the start time, which is this one, and 1833 is the end. So it moved towards right by 5 values, which is updating the time start and time end value. So that's why we created 2 calculations for increase and 2 calculations for decrease the time series, right? And that's why we added 4 actions, 2 for each. So now we clicked on the right one, it moved towards the right, the starting and the end point, right? So now same way when we click on the left, you will see it will reduce the start timeline and the end timeline by 5 years. And you can see it here, it went back. So now that way, our timeline will move towards left and right. So now what I want is, I want to show the description of each of the events when we select individual year, right? For that, I will create a new sheet where I will give the name, description, and in this sheet I will bring the description to the text label and year to the text label and present to the text label as well. And I will go here and I will edit these settings. I will change the size to, let's say, 28, and I will change it to, let's say, 18, and I will click OK. And I will make the view entire view. But now you will see everything is coming through, like all the years, all the events, all the presidents. But we don't want that. We want when you select a particular year, these things should change. So for that, I will create another parameter and will give the name selected parameter. And I will change it to integer, and I will keep the current value as 1789, which is the first president, right? And also I will create a calculated field where I will say year selection. And in this I will say if year value is equal to selected year parameter, then it's true. It's a Boolean output, right? So I will bring that into the filter value and select true. Now you will see only one record is coming based on the selection. So let's go back to the dashboard and let's remove all these values. This was just for the reference to show you how it works. Now I will hide this timeline as well. I don't want to see that. And I will adjust this accordingly. And once it's there, I will bring the description at the bottom, hide the description title, make it a little bit bigger, and you will see George Washington. And let's click on 1817 year. Nothing is happening, right? Because we haven't set up the parameter action. So we will go again to the dashboard menu, go to actions, create a new action to change the parameter when we select the timeline. So I have selected that timeline sheet and I want to change the parameter, selected parameter, and then I will change the field to update the year value, right? With the year value. And I don't want aggregation, so change it to none. And then press OK. Now if I select 1825, see the description below is changing for that particular president who was selected in that year. So that way you can use the scroll bar timeline to update any event or show what all events have occurred in that particular year. Now if you want to do a bit of formatting, then you can do that. And as I have shown you earlier, I have used a dark color background, so I will change it to black as a dashboard, and then I will go to individual sheets and I will format that as well and change it to black. And these X's, I will change the color to, let's say, white, and even with the right arrow I will change it to black, and left arrow, let's change it to black as well, and same with the description, we will change it to black. So once I do that, I have to change the text to a lighter color, which I will use it this way. And here you go. Let's go back and see how it looks like. Here you go. When we select these arrow keys, the bar is scrolling towards the right. And when we select a particular value, we are changing the description. So that's about it. How simple it is, easy to create a scrollable timeline in Tableau. I hope you guys enjoyed this session, and if you have any further questions, please feel free to drop me a comment in the section below, and I will try to get back to you as soon as possible. Thank you. See you next time.